The film opens with Thug parking his car down the street from the house he is renting. He narrates that when he was 9 years old, he got into a fight with a boy at school. His father told him, "Don't be a pussy." So Thug beat the boy to a pulp. His father later noted that perhaps he wasn't a pussy after all. Thug goes with Kyle Connor, the son of his employer, mob boss Charlie Connor, to a fishery to discuss a deal with a supplier. The man is willing to do business, but when pressed by Kyle about what the product is, the man gets defensive, to almost the point of violence. He sees Thug standing there silently and makes a crack about his age, while his associate looks to have a fight. Thug speaks to the man, telling him to calm his subordinate before he breaks both of his shoulders. The man smiles, and they ultimately conclude the deal with Kyle. Leaving, Kyle chastises Thug for even speaking up and threatening violence. However, Thug realizes Kyle is a novice and over his head. "You want to be a boss one day? Start acting like one," Thug says. As they drive, Thug tries to smoke, but Kyle tells him not to in his car. Kyle snorts, and Thug tells him his cocaine problem will only cause him trouble. Thug goes to a mattress store, which is the business cover for Charlie Connor's real operation. Charlie talks to Thug about how the deal went. Thug attempts to cover for Kyle, saying he got a decent price, but Charlie sees right through him. He knows Kyle is incompetent. Charlie tells Thug his son went to college and got a degree. Charlie wanted Kyle to be a lawyer, a legitimate profession to be proud of. Instead, Kyle wanted to go into the family business, even though Charlie doesn't think his son has it. Charlie tells Thug of his next assignment, and Thug blanks on key information. When Charlie asks if he's okay, Thug lies, saying he has been having really bad headaches. He goes outside to his car, where he has a notepad where he is writing down key information. He writes on one page that Charlie Connor is his boss. Thug goes to a local gym and spars with a new boxer. While he gets in some solid hits, he also takes a few himself. He later sits in the locker room, lost. The owner comes in and checks on him. Thug goes to leave, and the owner reminds him of why he was really there, to take the protection money owed. Thug takes it and leaves. Thug goes to his favorite local bar and argues with the bartender over getting free drinks. Suddenly, he hears a loud argument at the end of the room between a woman and her boyfriend. Thug walks over to the man and tells him to take it outside. Thug knocks him out with one punch. The woman yells at Thug, saying he killed her boyfriend. "He ain't dead, he's just stupid," Thug replies. Woman yells at Thug when he leaves the bar for knocking out her boyfriend. Thug tells her the guy deserved it. Woman nods with a smile, but then asks who will take her home. Thug and woman go back to her place where he makes out with her aggressively. She gently but firmly tells him to slow down, and they proceed to have sex. Later in bed, woman talks about how she doesn't mind the noise of her apartment and the nearby buildings as she hates the silence. She notices a tattoo on his arm, the name Loopy, and says that was a nickname she had in high school. When she asks Thug who it was for, he just replies, "Some whore." Woman notes that wasn't nice. The next morning, Thug leaves her apartment. He goes home and works out when he gets a call from Charlie to pick up a pill shipment from Dr. Gruber. Charlie asks if Thug knows where to go, and Thug says yes. Thug then proceeds to check his notebook. At the office, Dr. Gruber tries to haggle on the price of the pills, but Thug shuts him down. As he leaves, though, he asks him about his memory problems. Dr. Gruber tells him he should probably be checked out by a doctor who deals with that ASAP. Thug goes to the doctor. Meeting with her, he learns that he has CTE, and he may only have a few years before he can no longer take care of himself. She asks if he has kids, and he says yes. She tells him she is asking because he will need full-time care eventually. Back in his house, Thug makes a call to his daughter, Daisy. Daisy is less than happy to hear from him, wants nothing to do with him, and refuses to see him. Thug tries to ask about his son but cannot remember his name. "You mean Colin, Dad?" Daisy asks. Thug says yes and asks for his address. Daisy tells him that he died 2 years ago. The next morning, he goes to the cemetery where, after some searching, finds his son gravestone, clearing away the grass and dirt away in frustration. After taking a moment, he leaves. Thug goes to see his daughter at her house. Going around the back, he sees her. Daisy is less than happy to see him, But Thug says he just wants to see her. He soon learns that he has a granddaughter, Katie, and a grandson. Director Thug asks why she is selling the house, and Daisy laughs in his face. She was renting and the owners are selling it out from under her. Thug attempts to make some form of explanation for his past actions, but Daisy is having none of it. She tells him he was an asshole. The next day, Thug meets up with Woman, with her joking about him being a gangster. They spend the day in bed together. Thug notices the scars that encompass her tattoos, and she tells them they are scars from cigarette burns and bad boyfriends. She notices he has scars of his own, and Thug says that they came from assholes too. Thug gets a call from Charlie and gets up to dress, telling her he has to go to NYC. Thug and Kyle drive to NYC. Kyle asks for directions, knowing that Thug has been there multiple times. Thug deflects, telling him to use his GPS. When they reach their destination, Thug tells him to loop around the building so he can check for anything that is not supposed to be there. Satisfied, he makes the switch with their contact for a large moving truck, which Kyle and Thug drive off in. On the highway, Kyle wants to know what they are transporting, but Thug scolds him. "Jobs like this, you don't want to know," he says. Suddenly, a police car gets behind them and Kyle panics. Thug pushes him to the ground so the cop will only see him and not a panicking Kyle. Thug and Kyle get the truck to a nondescript suburban home owned by Gambero, who tells them to park around back. Kyle wants to get out, but Thug tells him to get back inside. Thug hears a woman screaming, and one of them, Araseli, reaches up to the driver's side where Thug is, begging for help. Two of Gambero's men drag her away, and Thug looks down in shock as his hand bleeds from being accidentally cut by her. Thug is horrified and guilt-ridden. The next day, Daisy is at the school, watching Dre playing football. Thug arrives and watches with her as Dre gets an interception that leads to a touchdown. After the game, Thug gives him the gift of a real mechanism for fishing. Dre wants to stick around for the next game, and Daisy allows it, seeing she has to pick up her daughter. After the other game, Thug tells Dre he promised his mother that he would get Dre home. Thug takes Dre to the gym, and the two of them watch a pair of boxers spar. Later, Thug and Dre pad up, and Thug shows Dre some basic moves. Thug drives him home after, asking Dre to not tell his mother about the boxing. That night, Thug dreams of his father again. When he wakes up, he realizes the wound he got from Araseli has opened up and he is bleeding again. As he tends to the wound, Thug narrates that his dad used to take him fishing every Sunday, but he was never allowed in the boat alone. Taking his bleeding hand as a sign he needs to do something, Thug goes back to Gambero's house and requests Araseli. She begins to disrobe, but Thug tells her no. "I don't know why I'm here," Thug admits. Thug asks her if she has family in the US and if she wants him to call them. Araseli tells them no, they already know. She tells him she has to work off a $20,000 debt to be free and shows him a picture of her child. Thug, quietly unsettled, but having no means to clear her debt, tells her he can't help her and leaves, leaving her distraught. Thug goes to Charlie's house and gives him the money. A troubled man, Thug, returns home and encounters a woman on the street. After some convincing, he allows her to stay at his rental. She discovers information about CTE, and after initial denial, Thug admits he is sick. He reflects on his late son, Colin, who overdosed on heroin, and regrets how he handled his son's sexuality. Acknowledging their relationship is doomed, Woman accepts it, choosing to enjoy their time together. Thug invites her to meet his daughter, Daisy, and grandchildren for dinner, but Daisy stands him up, leading to a breakdown in the restaurant. The next morning, Woman informs Daisy about his condition. Overhearing this, Thug lashes out, threatening Woman. Daisy, despite resenting his past absence, offers to help find a doctor. Overcome with guilt and frustration, Thug has a violent panic attack, harming himself in shame. The next morning, Daisy and Dre pack up the house when Thug arrives to apologize to Dre, advising him, "Don't be like me." Dre listens silently before walking away. That night, Thug visits Charlie's office, planning to ask for a $40,000 loan, half to free Araseli and half for Daisy's house down payment. As his memory worsens, he rehearses his speech but discovers Charlie and Kyle have a new enforcer. Charlie reveals he spoke to Dr. Gruber and fires Thug, implying no severance. When Thug struggles to recall his phone number, Charlie confirms he's no longer useful. As Thug leaves, he notices the enforcer's spiderweb tattoo, identical to the assassin's. Realizing Charlie and Kyle orchestrated his attempted murder, he knocks the enforcer out and pulls a gun. Confronting them, Thug demands Charlie open the safe, shooting Kyle in the leg when he refuses. Charlie complies, and Thug, betrayed and disappointed, tells him he had come for a favor after 30 years of loyalty, only to be discarded. Charlie pleads for his son's life, and Thug, in a final act of mercy, executes Charlie but spares Kyle before leaving. Thug calls his lawyer, Bert, for an emergency meeting, paying him in cash to send a cashier's check to his daughter for a house down payment. When Bert asks about the money's origin, Thug simply shows Charlie's name written on his hand. Thug then finds woman drunk in her bathroom with self-inflicted cigarette burns. After tending to her wounds, he holds her, admitting, "I knew it would be me who screws things up." He urges her to seek real help, but she insists he helps her, falling asleep in his arms. Later, Thug visits Gambaro to buy Araseli's freedom, offering $30,000. Gambaro refuses, laughing at the idea. When Thug presses, Gambaro reveals that Araseli was murdered by a client earlier that day and mocks her death. Overcome with guilt and rage, Thug draws his gun and orders Gambaro to move. Thug forces Gambaro to release all the women he has enslaved, using both his own money and Gambaro's. As Gambaro complies, one of his men attempts to ambush Thug. Thug shoots the attacker dead, but Gambaro stabs him multiple times with a hidden knife. As Gambaro gloats, the same girl picks up the fallen gun and shoots him in the head. Panicked, she tries to help Thug, but he tells her to take the money and leave. Fatally wounded, Thug calls Dre, instructing him to wait outside without waking his mother. Arriving at Daisy's house, Thug warns Dre that he will hear terrible things about him soon. Holding Dre's hand briefly, staining it with blood, Thug says, "I tried." Dre, sensing this is their final goodbye, returns inside. Instead of going home, Thug drives to an abandoned house nearby, drawn by its wind chime that reminds him of a guitar. As the sun rises and the chime sways in the wind, Thug, bleeding heavily, takes his final breaths. The last shot lingers on the ocean, implying his death. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.